Okay, so I just got done talking to you about the things in the book that I wanted to articulate, and I got a little bit cut off talking about the coming out process and how first we disclose to uh, mom generally, and then siblings. Those are the trends that we see, but really it's to the person that we've been testing that water and we feel most comfortable disclosing that information. It doesn't happen once abruptly, as some might assume and have the name a little bit suggest. And then one more thing I want to point out in the text is that sacrifice, sanctification, these are all really great things. I love how Gavin, Braithwaite, and Violent included these. They're seldom studied, and I think they're one of the reasons why we see those satisfaction scores drop for the 1 year in couple, the couple that had the first year after their child. I mean, they're tired, and they're not satisfied in the, oh, things are so great every day feeling. But moms in particular talk about the fulfillment that they feel and how in love they are with their partner and their children. And they describe how, sort of like in the movie Spinal Tap, while we might ask them on a scale from 1 to 10, how happy are you? They're writing like 6, 6, 6 at these rough times. I'm sorry, not 666 like the devil, 6, and then again 6 and 6, and rather than a 10. When they see their child smile or their partner lets them know, I love you so much, and this is the most fulfilling thing I've ever done with anyone, I'm so glad it's you, that these moments are like a number 11. Remember in Spinal Tap when he wanted the volume to go to number 11? They said it only goes to 10. He's like, no, 11. That's how people feel, and that is a type of intimacy and the sanctification and the people are sacrificing, they're giving of themselves, they're fulfilled. It's an important part that we as researchers haven't mastered yet, okay? And I don't want you to forget it, how important it is. Okay, so what we're going to do in this part is we're going to essentially fly through the chapter. So is intimacy part of being in a family? Is affection part of it? I started off this whole shebang talking about what makes families normal or not, and how we really shouldn't use that word. And I talked about a bell-shaped curve and affection. So it's possible you can be in a family and have very little affection. It is not part of everyone's, or even people in our own culture in America's ideas about marriage and family. Before the 1700s, as Kuntz points out, she was really good at showing the history of families. People didn't marry for love. They didn't start families because they really wanted to have that sweet baby that they took care of. They had kids because they wanted someone to help them on the farm, help them take care of things. And they married because it was a good, if you think about it, almost like a business arrangement. So even though it wasn't arranged per se always, for the 1700s, we weren't thinking about love as the reason why you married or had children. So it's kind of a new concept. Now, I think one could argue that affection, intimacy, these are central parts of most people's ideas about committed relationships and family, but not all. So let's move to the specific component of communicated affection. Even within a family, we have varying desires for affectionate communication. Now, it may be that we're just expressing affection differently. So the things that I've talked about before, smooching, hugging, saying I love you, that may not be how your family communicated affection. Maybe they did it by going to work, working the night shift, working their butt off so that you had food to eat, a good life, could go to school. All of these things are ways that we can show love. The problem is that we don't always, especially as young children, think, oh, my dad works the night shift and I don't get to hug and smooch him, see him very much. That must mean he really loves me. So communicating affection, the ways that we study it, the hug, kiss, and saying I love you, that has a positive effect that you want to try and work it into your relationships. Okay, how do you communicate affection, create intimacy? These are just things I want you to think about it. How'd your family of origin create it with you? How will you communicate affection if you're already married? How do you communicate it now? In a committed relationship? In your family relationships? Do you have children? Do you have a fictive kin relationship? How are you going to communicate that affection? So we're thinking about how is it communicated, how we communicate our love and liking for each other, and it's how we gain intimacy, is this closeness and depth. So these are all things that I've said before. It's just in the physical display. Nonverbals, and self-disclosure, hugging and kissing, sexual activity, verbal displays, I love you. The self-disclosure component is so important that it actually has served as a love prime in several of my studies. We just ask participants to share the last positive thing that's happened with them, and we find that it makes them think wonderful things about each other. I mean, the self-disclosure and love are really connected. Are some of these better than others is the question, and I already wrote a little V there. I don't know what that's all about because that's kind of a trick. In terms of being better than others, well, we see that verbal and nonverbal displays are both beneficial, but I will say, and Corey Floyd does a lot of work in that the nonverbal displays, hugging, kissing, smooching, even sexual activity, have more apparent benefits than the verbal. Now, I'm not implying that you can just hug and smooch and high five, and you don't have to say that I love you, you mean the world to me. Just saying when we hold these against each other, the nonverbal seems to pack a bigger punch in and of itself. And Corey Floyd would say this is because of how we've evolved, and as creatures, and we need touch, and we need that connection. I would say that both are so important, and the verbal displays, while yeah, it comes through and I love you, you mean the world to me, I think the verbal is more of the stuff we've already talked about with relational maintenance and this day-to-day care. So it may not manifest in studies where you just ask people, say I love you, and then watch how their partner responds physically and emotionally. We'd have to get into their life and follow them around and creepily hang out with them as they move from interaction to interaction, and then watch how over time being a good communicator creates intimacy. But, right now it's really easy to do a study where people kiss or hug or even engage in sexual activity in a laboratory, and man, their physical health is better, their mental health. We'll talk about that in a minute. So are some of these better than others? I told you, verbal and nonverbal are both very helpful. But you can't think that you can remove the nonverbal and it's fine. Research shows that's just not true. Which is another reason why long-distance couples have a little bit of a trouble spot, right? The affection that's communicated does vary by the type of bond, the parent-child, marital affection, sibling. There's variation there. Don't worry about that last part. We've talked about that. Parent-child affection, this is how we learn to show affection and how to show affection. We learn to do it and how to do it. Without affection, we do know that babies can get sick or die. So marasmus, which you may have heard about before, is the problem that occurs when a baby is not touched. So World War II, nurses were trying desperately to care for babies that were without their primary caregiver, without their family. So there's this lack of resources. We have all these babies and too few nurses. So the nurses were able to keep up with keeping the babies fed, keeping them warm, all of the other things that one needs to survive. But they weren't able to give each baby a lot of time holding them, kissing them, making googly faces at them, doing the things that hopefully all of you experience as children. And so those babies were getting sick, and there was no explanation except that the affection, the lack of communication. We need it. We need it. It's essential. So think in your families, how did you manage it? Manage your affection displays. You might go back to some of those dialectics. So that's what the blue text is all about. We tend to show and respond to the affection we were taught. And we tend to give as we perceive receiving affection. So if in your family you displayed affection from big bear hugs, well, that's what you're probably looking for in your relationships. If deep, long love letters are something that your parents did for each other, perhaps, or maybe they always wrote you notes, then that's what you're interested in. So this has been really popularized in the whole love style notion. But really you can think about how you watched affection and intimacy is how you're going to expect it and how you're probably going to want to give it. As your family grows, children do report less affection from fathers. So adult children report that their fathers have been less and less affectionate over time. Fathers don't see that as being the case. And overall, parents tend to rate affection higher, then their children rate it. If you ask parents how affectionate are you with your kid, and you ask kids how affectionate are your parents are going to always rate it higher. And across the board, parents tend to rate the relationship better than the children do. And you might think, what about when we feel love, warmth, and admiration, but we don't show it? Is that okay? No. No. I mean, feeling love is a great thing, but love that is never displayed, never communicated, is not going to give benefits like communicated love. And many scholars would say that love uncommunicated is not love. So, communicate it. Attachment theory is one that you've probably heard about before. I'll give you the skinny again. Attachment is necessary to keep infants safe. So infants, with most animals even, watch some Animal Kingdom. But you can watch animals and certainly people. Children need to feel that they're linked to their primary caregiver. They need to feel that that's a safe person for them to go to where they can feel secure. A home base, if you will. And it keeps them safe knowing that let's just use the mom as an example. I'll talk in a minute about why more researchers on moms. Mom is the person that we can always go to. I don't want to be away from mom. Mom keeps me safe. I like being with her. It's comfortable. It's warm. It's where I get my food. I'm going to stay with her. That keeps the infant safe, wanting to be near the mom. It keeps them from wandering off and getting hurt. So, as a result, children do stay closer to their CG, or means caregiver. Children physically stay closer to their caregiver than to other people. They stay close to her, him, and they don't stray. Then what happens is, slowly over time, within close proximity to that caregiver, they'll slowly explore outward. And when they slowly explore outward, they take little steps forward. This shows their self-confidence, their security, and their autonomy. It helps to build those things. So mom's my home base, but now I feel safe being with her. Now I'm going to try and explore this little thing. I'm going to look back. Yep, she's still there. Okay, good. I feel good. And more I'm going to venture out. I always think with this about my middle son. When he was first exploring the water, and he, moving toward the water, moving toward the pool, I was near the pool, not in the water. My son would stand with me, and he'd literally hold on to my legs. And then he would move toward the water, and he'd put his foot in the water. And then he'd run back to me. And then he didn't even look at me. Just run back, hold my legs. And then he would go back out to the water, and he would dip his foot in just a teensy bit further, and then he'd run back to me. Each time he was getting excited and interested, but as he did it, this is a new adventure, right? It makes us feel just a tad bit nervous. And even my Nathan, who was a wild one. And then he would come back each time. Well, attachment theory, I want you to think of this in this way. Mom is safe. She's a home base, and we don't even have to look back. We know she's there. We move out. We test the water, we feel good about ourselves for trying it, and then when we've had enough of that, we go back to mom to feel secure again. Each time we're gaining that independence, that self-confidence, and feeling autonomous, that makes us feel strong. And then we come back to her. It makes us feel secure to have her there. That's attachment. So the bond between the primary caregiver and child is critical in this pattern for the children's future attachments. So when it's set up like Nathan and I at the pool, whether it's the pool or whether it's other incidents in life, going to play at a friend's house, going to daycare, going to grandma's, going to dad's work, going to mom's, wherever it is, coming back. You come back. You always know my mom is there for me. And then I explore. Then when that adult child moves into life, in romantic relationships, the adult child goes, oh, I like this new partner. I feel comfy and cozy with them. But I can go do my thing, and he or she can go do his or her thing, and then we're going to come back together. Oh, comfortable together, comfortable apart. Because the trust that was built with mom, the primary caregiver, always coming back from that pool, and she's right there, makes the grown-up feel comfortable to leave the partner, trust him or her, to be fine and do things right, and then they'll come back together. Okay, so children learn to cope with the temporary removal from an attached party through the protection of this first attachment. This video clip no longer works. There used to be some beautiful lab tests of attachment in children, and that was my search for it, but these are no longer on. When we watch videos of young children, we can see the attachment types. So I'm going to describe them to you here. We can see how attachment types form. The type that I've been describing is secure attachment. So by 6 weeks, let's talk about the time frame here, and then we'll talk about secure attachment and the other types of attachment. By 6 weeks, children have a preference for their primary caregiver. We see that in children. They'll go with other people, but they prefer one caregiver. At 14 to 20 months, separation anxiety is normative. That happens. So when a child is 14 months to 20 months, in about that range, when they're away from their parent, they get anxious. They may cry a little bit. Mom or dad leave. They may go up to the window. It makes them sad. That's part of this process. By age 2 to 3, most develop a very secure attachment, which is what I've been describing. They have a healthy attachment to that caregiver who learn to adjust to and adequately meet the needs of the child. So a child who's securely attached, like I've been describing with Nathan and I, that child is happy towards strangers. They don't like to be separated, and they're happy to be returned to their caregiver. They still prefer their caregiver, their primary caregiver, but they'll go with strangers, and they'll be happy with strangers. Why? Because their mom has let them know that's okay. It's okay to go and explore on your own. I'll be here for you. I'm here for you. My child's daycare teacher said once, children have rankings. They got their primary caregiver, and that they may have a secondary caregiver. They have teachers or their parents' friend or their friends' parents. They've got these rankings, right? And even though if you have a top ranking, think about yourself. You're secure in that top ranking. You're meeting other people, being with other people. Less than 30% develop one of a couple types of insecure attachment styles. So now it gets less warm and fuzzy. So insecure attachment styles result from several different things. And really it's about not taking good care in this process. Mom's not doing a good job or other primary caregivers. So we have the avoidance style, and some people break this down to fearful avoidant or fearful dismissive. This style is due to the mom or whomever the primary caregiver was being overly stimulating or under stimulating. Okay, so when moms are overprotective, when the mom at the pool doesn't let the child put their foot in, runs after the child, says, please be careful, please be careful, please be careful, the whole time, when the child almost slips in, says, that's what happens when you stray from me, all of that's overstimulation, and that creates a flight response in children where they think, I got to get away from this broad. Understimulation is a neglectful parent, the parent who's standing at the pool and the child moves toward the pool water, but when the child comes back, she's gone. Now, of course, I'm using the pool as a kind of metaphor for all sorts of things, right? About being there for your child. It could be a pool, it could be at your house. It could be also when your child is talking to you, when you're there for them or not. Okay, I think you understand that. Okay. Then anxious ambivalent style is what happens from an inconsistent pattern. So with avoidant, either the mom's totally in the kid's face and doesn't let them explore, or totally neglectful. But with anxious ambivalent, there's an inconsistency there. So what happens is sometimes the mom is in their face, sometimes she's just comfortably there, sometimes she's not around. And so children who live with inconsistency really hurts children. It hurts grown-ups too, but inconsistency really hurts children. They're trying to figure it all out, and so they need consistency so they can learn. So the child blames him or herself because they're thinking, well, sometimes mom's around and available, but sometimes she's gone, or sometimes she's in my face. So it must be something about my behavior. Let me try and figure out, what am I doing? Why does she act this way one time, then another time she acts this way? Because children don't understand that their parents, whom they trust initially, that their parents could be just making bad choices. They're thinking it's about them. So the children blame themselves. And it's so hard to watch this in kids. So like the secure, they're a little sad when their mom leaves. But when she comes back, while the avoidant or the dismissive is like, oh, okay, she's back, anxious ambivalents are a little bit relieved when the mom comes back, but they're angry. So it's like they never get relief because they never feel comfortable with what's going to happen next, that she's going to come back or that she's going to be absent. At least with avoidance, the consistent pattern lets them know what to expect, and we like knowing what to expect. But with anxious ambivalent, we sometimes get this, sometimes get that, and it really creates insecurity. And so all those great things that secure children bring into their adult relationships about being able to trust their partner, spending quality time with the partner, and then going their separate ways, trusting they can come back. Insecures don't have those luxuries. So in adult relationships, securely attached, have healthy they're self-confident in themselves. They have great connection. They don't worry about abandonment. So you can think about this as an intertwined spider web, that one person and another person, they both have a secure attachment. The spider can move across. Picture a little spider on my hands, moving from one web to the next. They can just go right across because the two are connected. They have their own things. They don't worry about getting abandoned, getting caught up. It's just intertwined. It's a nice web. The spider's dancing across it. Avoidant parties tend to be withdrawn from relationships. They're uncomfortable getting close to or depending on a partner. They can't trust a partner. They couldn't trust the person who was supposed to teach him, who did teach him about these things. So their webs are separate. Okay? You're doing your thing. I can't trust you to really get close, and we can't mesh webs. Anxious ambivalent are over-involved. They're demanding. They're dependent. They can even be codependent. They're uncomfortable being by themselves. They're calling all the time. They're freaking out. We haven't spent time together. What are you doing? I miss you. These are webs with heavy entanglement. So the webs are like this, but they're all entangled. And so if you're the spider trying to just nicely cross your web to the other, you're going to get tangled up. You're going to get tangled in that web because there are all these traps. And you're wondering, why is my partner acting so needy? I'm just going on a work trip. Well, maybe he or she has an anxious ambivalent style. So I've been probably sounding pretty sexist to you, perhaps doing all this mom. A lot of the research is on moms, okay? A lot of the research is about moms because moms have more of they make the milk in the hospital, they deliver the babies, they connect before birth, and fathers connect before birth too. But there's a physical component, so mothers are studied a lot, and also to date, mothers tend to be the primary giver, not all of the time. When we're trying to study a phenomenon, we're best suited to start with the most people to make it generalizable. But we do know that father's affection, even though fathers are often studied as the primary caregiver, father's affection may actually be more instrumental in the quality of romantic relationships that people have as adults. So, and even there's some links with sexual orientation. So that's an older study, but I want to mention this because, fathers play a big role. Also, we see that these things move up the generation. So what I want to do now for you, I want to point out a couple things. So all of this has been downward socialization. We're talking about how parents teach their kids. But this is kind of an interesting thing. So in this 94 study, it's an older study, it's a goodie though, mothers had lower developmental goals for their children when they were fearful of their children's attachment to the father. So moms are busy worrying about, is my child having a good relationship with their father and attaching appropriately? And that actually impeded their development. When they worried like that, it kept them from focusing on other things in their children's development. It held them back. So it really shows this system. And this isn't just mamas again. There's also a lot that we can understand about men's affection. Now, we talked about the modeling and compensation hypothesis last time. Remember that the mediator is the identification with the parent. If a child identifies with the parent, then they're going to model their behavior. If they don't identify, they'll compensate. They'll change the patterns. And the compensation is what I really want to focus on in this video clip. So, I'm going to show you I'll show you right now this clip called The Other F Word, and this shows you compensation and action in terms of affection. And this is supported in the literature, but I think this is a beautiful example, and this documentary is quite good. It's called The Other F Word.
Go round and round all through the town. When we were younger, we were all nihilistic and didn't care, live for the day, live fast. I thought we were going to change the world.
This troublemaking is what attracted me.
Drink beer and that stuff, Punk rock was supposed to be about no responsibility, no rules, I'm going to do things my way. Maybe punk rock was never meant to grow up, but it did. Having a baby changed everything. I get up a lot earlier now. Are you tired? No, I can't take 20 Barbies. How about this one? This one's like cool hearts and skulls. Stuff to be a punk rock hero and to be a good code figure for your kids. Homework, back, bed. I always look at shelter, the F word.
Too dominating fizz on my arm, headache like that to a 4-year-old.
There's nothing really in the punk rock ethos that prepares you for being a dad.
My parents weren't Roman Catholic. Our dads weren't there, man.
Being gone all the time doesn't give you that bonding you need.
How did we go from rebelling against our own parents to become parents ourselves?
The classic parent attitude we kid, like, I brought you into this world, I gave you life. It's like,
That's authoritarian.
My kids gave me life. You know, they gave me a reason.
That's what I want to hold on to, is that feeling that we can make a change out there. Maybe the way we change the world is by raising better kids.
Sometimes you think about, oh, I've tattooed my forehead. You know?
I love that. It's a really good documentary. It really shows what Floyd calls this changing culture of fatherhood. It's so good. Oh, Flea. He's so sweet, the stuff they say. Okay. So, things to think about: affection, roles and rules for affection in your family. Did you have rules about it? How and how not to show affection? The last thing we're going to talk about is love and affection in marriage and some of the literature. I want you to keep in mind that affection doesn't go away after marriage or even diminish at childbirth, but love does take different forms. So, this is Fisher's terminology. So she talks about lust, that's intense physical attraction. What she calls attraction, which I really consider the emotional bonding or romantic love that we think about, positive affect, security. The later attachment of companionship. And then she discovers in a lot of her research that while each of these things has a different manifestation in our brain, all of them can happen at once. All are important, all have benefits, and while most of us move from lust to attraction to attachment, and they're exclusive, you really can have them all at once. So couples that have been together for 80 years can have that intense physical attraction, okay? But let's talk about these a little bit. So the emotions of lust, this first stage, this is an intense chemical reaction that is comparable when we look at the brain to someone who has obsessive compulsive disorder. So what that means is I hope this has happened for you, or that it happens for you again or continues to happen to you, it's this amazing period of a relationship where you are gaga, right? So just like, think about obsessive compulsive, you are thinking about them all the time. Hopefully not contacting them all the time, but thinking about them. You get distracted thinking about them constantly. That's lust. It's intense. It's physical. You have a physical response even just thinking about them. So this lasts about 6 months in that consistent state where day in, day out, you're doing this a lot. That only lasts for about 6 months. After 6 months, what happens is you don't have it continuously, but you can get a jolt of it when you engage in affectionate communication. So put differently, you've got this intense physical reaction to this other person, even thinking about them, for 6 months pretty consistently. And in that time, everyone around you is kind of like, whoa, got to hold on tight, because you're probably not even eating as well as you should or sleeping right. You're probably not as great at your job, right? Because you're just, about that other person. It's a euphoric place. And your brain feels at points like you're on drugs. I mean, it's so intense. Anyway, that can't endure forever, right? I mean, if it did, we'd lose our jobs. We would just wither away. You can't sustain that forever. Our body wasn't made to do that, but it jump starts it. Lust is what jump starts the whole thing. Now what happens is, as we move into attraction where we're bonding, we're getting in some fights, it's getting real, getting romantic love, we start to feel secure in that. And hopefully, if we don't have a secure attachment style, our partner helps us through it, right? Then, as we move through attraction and attachment in particular, where this is a companionship, talk about best friendships, sexual activity is needed. Sexual activity and the verbal and other nonverbal displays of affection. Those are linked to physical health. I want you to remember that these two things are reciprocally related. So sexual activity improves your health, and health improves your sexual activity. Saying I love you and enacting out love makes you a healthier person. And of course, if your relationship is healthier and all those things, then so all of these things are reciprocally linked. General decline over time. So people are going to see a decline in lust over time, but some people's peak and continue in old age when some of the other stressors of life are gone. Relationships that survive happily married couples, happily committed couples, they have intimate exchanges. So it could be letter writing, nonverbal displays, saying I love you, etc., etc., etc. Again, physical activity is key. You can't just drop that. You need the physical activity. But again, being satisfied and feeling committed is linked to sexual activity in particular and other displays of affection. So when you're happy, you do those things more. But keep in mind that doing those things more also makes you happy. They're linked. So if I ask you on an exam, which way does it go? Sexual activity to happiness and health, or health and happiness to physical activity? The answer is both. It goes both ways. So do it all. Sibling affection, we know that the more affection is communicated, the happier they are and closer they are. Affection with your sibling peaks during college and decreases when new families are formed and resurges in older adulthood. Siblings closest in age and those born later express the greatest amount of closeness, and sisters do more than brothers. We talked about this before, but some of this could be how it's measured. Parent and adult-child affection. We see that affection is closely linked to children's satisfaction with the mom, not as much with dad. We're not sure why. Maybe we just don't expect it from dad. It could have to do with attachment theory. There's some evidence that intimacy is greater among families, parent, child, sibling, that share biological ties. You might think about why. We mentioned this in week 1. It may be because of some of our social constructions about what men can and shouldn't do. Like I always feel sorry for the man on the park bench who doesn't have a child. People look at him funny. When I sit on the park bench and my kids aren't with me and the kids are around, nobody comes over and goes, lady, what are you doing here? Where's your kid? But we do that to men. I think that we don't allow men to behave in affectionate ways always. And then also the decision to be a caregiver for an aging parent. This is another way that affection is shown. Okay, daughters tend to do it because of affection. Sons tend to do it because they feel obligated. So more on caregiving for our parents will come later. But this is growing abundantly due to demographic and economic shifts. And caregiving is more often enacted by females and received by females. Why is it included in this unit? Because it's a great form of intimacy. The positives here are closeness and personal fulfillment. And you can probably think of other rewards. The negatives of caregiving for an aging parent are role shifts, stress to a marriage, physical and emotional strain, and of course you can think of other costs. Okay? Final big points, affection associated with family sat and closeness. You got to show it somehow. We've talked about that already, and your book talks about it. We share what we like to be shown. People who are affectionate with one family member are more likely to be affectionate with others, so it's a trait in many ways, and even in our in-law relationships. When official family ties are gone, affectionate calm does tend to dwindle. So, for instance, we see with grandparents, if you were close with your grandparents, but then your parent of that grandparent relationship dies or there's a divorce, you probably will be less affectionate with not only with that whole side of the family. So we really link affection to family. And that was just an example of a discussion question. Don't worry about that. I would love to take more of your discussion questions on this. I gave you an awful lot here. Please see me if you have any questions, and be more affectionate.